I'm Bill Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and author of How to Prevent the Next Pandemic. Ask me anything. I'm excited to be here for my 10th AMA. Since my last AMA, I've written a book called How to Prevent the Next Pandemic. I explain the cutting-edge innovations that will make it possible to make sure there's never another COVID-19, many of which are getting support from the Gates Foundation, and I propose a plan for making the most of those breakthroughs. The world needs to spend billions now to avoid millions of deaths and trillions of dollars in losses in the future. You can ask me about preventing pandemics, our work at the Foundation, or anything else. Proof. Link update. I'm afraid I need to wrap up. Thanks for all the great questions. Just what was Epstein's island like? What did you do there? I never visited any of his islands. I did have meetings where global health funding was discussed. In retrospect, I regret meeting with him. I have serious respect for you for actually answering this. You seem like a good sport, putting up with all of the negative comments. But, on a serious note, fuck billionaires. I hope every one of them gets their wealth fairly taxed into oblivion. I was in the second cohort for the Gates Millennium Scholarship. Just wanted to personally thank you for helping me be the first in my family to attend college. Do you still have any involvement with the Scholar Program? Yes. The Foundation did 20,000 scholarships under the original program. We have an ongoing program that is not quite as big but still is attracting great students. I am always inspired when I meet the students who received the scholarship and are helping other kids. What is an appropriate level of taxation for the rich? A tax system needs to be progressive. Getting marginal rates above 60% often leads to a lot of complex avoidance if your system allows for that. It is strange to have the capital gain rate below the ordinary income rate. And a state tax could go somewhat above 60%. It is amazing how few countries have those. Quite a big chunk of the population of my country, for some reason, believes that you're the one responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic and that you're trying to take control of the human population by injecting chips in them through vaccines. What would you say to these people? In 2015, I spoke out about my fears a pandemic would come up and cause tens of millions of deaths. My foundation funds vaccine research to save lives. I spend billions on vaccines and I am proud they have helped cut under 5 deaths in half over the last 20 years, from 10% to 5%. The idea of chips in the vaccines doesn't make sense. Why would I want to know where people are? What would I do with the information? And why use vaccines when we all are carrying phones? Hey Bill, what do you think about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? I don't own any. I like investing in things that have valuable output. The value of companies is based on how they make great products. The value of crypto is just what some other person decides someone else will pay for it, so not adding to society like other investments. Can you still jump over a chair from a standing start? A smaller chair than I could do at age 30. Pretty small now. I try to stay fit playing a lot of tennis. What do you plan to do with all the farmland you have purchased? My investment team bought the farmland. It is less than 0.1% of all U.S. farmland because the ownership is so diverse. We invest in the farms to raise productivity. Some are near cities and might end up having other uses. I also own less than 0.1% of all U.S. farmland. What do you think is the best way to combat misinformation, politicization of public health concerns by politicians or bad news outlets? I keep looking for good idea of how to stop the bad information. Some stuff is obviously wrong and right now even that doesn't get stopped. The interest level in the crazy explanations make that spread really fast and the truth doesn't spread because it is boring. I feel bad if these rumors prevent people from getting vaccinated and boosted since that has saved millions of lives. What kind of phone do you have? I have an Android Galaxy Z Fold 3. I try different ones. With this screen I can get by with a great portable PC and the phone and nothing else. How short are you on GME? Why is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation tied to the BCG? The BCG has gone and destroyed companies from within. I have never been long or short GameStop. Do you mean the TB vaccine called BCG? No, the Boston Consulting Group. BCG is one of the top global consulting firms. It makes sense to use them. What would you rather, McKinsey, Bain, or someone like Olivares Marcel? Or PwC? LMAO. Every Fortune 500 company uses consulting groups. Anyone who thinks that there is something insidious about using a consulting group has no idea what the fuck that are talking about. The Government of Canada regularly uses them, as do charities and other groups. It's like using a law firm. You're paying for an outside arm's-length opinion on a matter. It's insane seeing people who have never interacted or dealt with these types of firms have such nonsensical views and espouse their conjecture-filled rhetoric. BCG, the company your foundation is in partnership for schools. Here's an article they put out. Almost like you guys have had a long relationship. Link edit. They stayed a relationship since 2003. Dodge successful. I have never been long or short GameStop. But my family office might provide some liquidity to certain hedge funds, and they are short GameStop. This is like saying you're funding big tobacco because you own index funds. Technically true, idiotic nonetheless. The apes strong together wearing tinfoil hats conspiracy movement really came out in force today. Took 4 doses of vaccine, 5G reception still bad. Any tips? You need 5th one, with 4 you'll only get LTE at most. I must be wearing the wrong kind of tin foil hat because it doesn't work for me. Have you tried taking it off and then putting it back on again? What's something I can do now to help with climate change? As green products come out like electric cars or synthetic meat or heat pumps for home heating, cooling, they will cost a bit extra. By buying these products you drive scaling up, which will lead to lower prices, so green premiums are reduced. Other than your political voice or influencing the company you work at, this is probably the biggest thing you can do. Which developing countries are you most optimistic about? Some of the so-called LMIC, low-middle income countries have huge promise: Vietnam, India, Pakistan, Indonesia. In Africa it is important for Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria and Ethiopia to succeed. Ethiopia was doing well until the civil unrest, so hopefully they can get past that. Some of the smaller countries are doing well, but we need the big ones to also do well. What are the biggest innovations in global and public health you expect to see in the next 5 to 10 years? We are gaining understanding of malnutrition. Solving this would be huge for the 40% of kids in Africa who never fully develop their brains or bodies. We still need to prevent and cure HIV. We need to eradicate malaria, which will take decades. We are close to eradicating polio. Other areas like better contraception or understanding and preventing preterm birth and stillbirths show promise. Bill, thank you for taking the time. Big fan of both your work at Microsoft, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Berkshire Hathaway. I want to ask you about how most philanthropists think about return on investment of charity. Most billionaire people doesn't seem to put much effort on it and just pick whatever subject they're most interested. As far as I understand, your option for epidemiology and sanitation was a diligent choice, because you think that money and a drive for business gives the most bang for the buck. Some newspapers cover your fierce negotiation position to get us the vaccines, something that you are good at and I am thankful for. My question is, do you think that most philanthropists are as diligent on their philanthropy as they were when they made their wealth? What are good themes where a drive for business can help the most? I was stunned when I found out that a life could be saved for under $1,000. This came when I read about what kids die of, including the 1993 World Development Report. So our foundation, supported by Warren Buffett's incredible generosity, prioritized this. The success of our work in global health is well beyond what I would have expected. I do work with other philanthropists a lot, including through the Giving Pledge, where they can learn and be encouraged to be bold. What do you think the long-term impact of COVID will be on society? I'm out in NYC and we are at a point where 1 in 5 people are catching COVID and no one seems to be receptive of preventing the spread anymore. I ended up getting it last week despite being vaccinated and the symptoms were awful. Do you think there will be long-term ramifications of everyone going through COVID in the next few months because people are unwilling to prevent the spread anymore? Neither vaccination or infection prevents you from getting infected again, but the disease will be milder and you will spread it less. Scientists funded by the foundation are working on vaccines that prevent you from getting infected, but those are 3 to 4 years away in the best case. So until then we will have to keep getting boosted, especially people who are older or who have comorbidities. Fearnet. Why do you have multiple private jets, a 66,000 square foot house, and a 351-foot yacht and preach about climate change? Your carbon footprint alone exceeds the yearly output of small cities. What happened with the Oxford vaccine? Why wasn't it open source so that all countries could make it? I am so sad over how slow the vaccination in third world countries has been. The world did not get the vaccines out in an equitable way. Places like India did well because the Gates Foundation, Serum and the Government of India worked together to make 1.4 billion doses of the AstraZeneca vaccines. It was a tragedy that old people in countries like South Africa got vaccines after young people in other countries. My book talks about how we can do better next time. Today there is plenty of vaccine, but still the distribution and demand is holding back coverage. Your top 5 books of all time? 2 of Smill's latest grand transitions and How the World Really Works are great. Pinker has a lot of great books including The Better Angels of Our Nature. I am just finishing The Coddling of the American Mind, which was good. Ezra Klein's book on polarization is good. Of course fiction books are more fun, like Heart or A Gentleman in Moscow or All the Light You Cannot See. What is the future of nuclear power? There is nuclear fission. If it can solve the cost, safety and waste concerns, it can make a massive contribution to solving climate change. I am biased because I have been investing over $1 billion in this starting over a decade ago. Also promising is nuclear fusion. It is less clear if we will succeed, but it has less safety and waste issues if it works. So I am hopeful nuclear will improve and be a huge help for climate. What's the one thing you've bought that's brought you the most joy? If we do succeed in polio eradication, that will be super joyful. It has taken a lot of patience and great strategy to get close to success. The thing that has succeeded the best so far is funding vaccines for poor countries through Gavi. I do like burgers, nice tennis rackets and all the great streaming services, but nothing too unique. Mr. Gates, what are your thoughts on indoor farming? For some high-value crops it can work. For the cereal crops like wheat, rice and maize it is unlikely to ever be economic. We can improve seeds for all crops a lot to increase productivity. This is a key investment to help reduce the problems caused by climate change. How did you manage with stress during all of your class action lawsuits of the 1990s and 2000s? Although those lawsuits were tough, I have been super lucky in my life and I had a good team of people working with me to help get them settled and move ahead.